I watched the footage and saw someone standing over me while I was asleep. Not outside, not breaking in, already inside. I live alone. Small house, no roommates, no pets, just me. Last night, I was on the couch downstairs when I heard footsteps above me. Slow, deliberate, like someone pacing. Doors I knew I locked were slightly open. Lights I never touched kept turning on. Food kept disappearing, little by little. I told myself I was stressed, imagining things, losing it. But the camera didn't imagine anything, because at 2:17 a.m., the motion alert triggered, from inside my house. And when I opened the feed, the figure stopped and slowly turned its head straight toward the camera. Then it started walking toward the stairs, toward me. Before we continue with this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. I didn't move. I couldn't. My eyes were locked on the screen, watching that figure get closer to the stairs in real time, one slow step at a time. The camera angle didn't show their face clearly, just a silhouette, tall enough to reach the top frame of the doorway, moving like they already knew exactly where everything was. My house, my layout, my routine. And that's what made it worse. This wasn't someone sneaking in, panicking, rushing. There was no hesitation, no searching. They didn't check doors or windows. They didn't look confused. They walked like they belonged there, like they had been there before. The stairs creaked slightly as they stepped down, and I heard it. This time, not through the camera, but directly above me. Real. Close. Too close. I slowly lowered the brightness on my phone, my thumbs shaking, trying not to make a sound. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it through the walls. Every instinct told me to run, but the front door was across the room, past the staircase, past them. So I stayed exactly where I was, lying on the couch, pretending to still be asleep, while watching a stranger walk down into my living room. Then the feed glitched for a second. Just 1 second, and when it came back, the figure was gone from the camera. But the footsteps didn't stop. They were still moving, somewhere behind me. I wasn't imagining it anymore. Someone was inside my house. The footsteps stopped just a few feet behind the couch. Not upstairs, not on the stairs. Right there, in the same room as me. I kept my eyes shut, forcing my breathing to stay slow, steady, like I was still asleep. Every muscle in my body felt locked in place, like if I even twitched, it would give me away. There was no sound for a few seconds. Then I felt it. Presence. You know that feeling when someone is standing close to you, not touching you, but close enough that you just know they're there? That. I tightened my grip around my phone under the blanket, trying not to react, but my mind was racing. Who was this? How long had they been here? Why weren't they saying anything? A floorboard creaked again, this time softer, slower. They were moving, circling. I risked the smallest movement, barely tilting my eyes open just enough to see past the edge of the blanket. Nothing. The room looked empty, but I knew they were still there. I could hear it, the faintest shift of weight near the hallway. Then suddenly, silence again. Too clean, too complete. I waited. 5 seconds, 10, 20. Still nothing. Finally, I forced myself to sit up, my entire body shaking as I turned toward the stairs. Empty. I checked the hallway. Empty. Kitchen? Empty. It didn't make sense. There was nowhere to go. The doors were still locked, windows closed, no sound of anything opening or closing. It was like they had just vanished. I grabbed my phone again and pulled up the camera feed, scrubbing back through the footage. I watched the moment again, the figure coming down the stairs, then the glitch, 1 second of static, and after that, nothing. No exit, no movement, just an empty frame. That's when something else hit me. They didn't leave. They were still inside. Morning couldn't come fast enough. As soon as the sun came up, I tore through the house. Every room, every closet, every corner. I checked under beds, inside cabinets, behind doors. Nothing. But the signs were still there. A cabinet in the kitchen slightly open, bread missing from the loaf I bought yesterday, a glass in the sink I didn't use, and the back door? Still locked from the inside. I grabbed my phone and called my friend Marcus, pacing the living room as I explained everything. The footsteps, the camera, the figure. There was a pause on the line before he said, carefully, "Dan, are you sure you're not just stressed? Maybe sleepwalking or something?" I stopped pacing. "I saw someone," I said quietly. "They were standing in my house." He didn't respond right away. "Then call the police," he finally said. I looked around my living room again, the same space I'd been in for years, now feeling completely unfamiliar. "I will," I said, "but first, I need proof." That afternoon, I went out and bought 3 more cameras, one for the kitchen, one facing the hallway, and one pointed directly at the attic hatch, because there was one place I hadn't checked, or maybe one place I didn't want to. That night, I turned off the lights, laid back on the couch again, and pretended to sleep, my phone in my hand, screen dimmed, cameras live. The house was silent. Too silent. Then, at exactly 3:03 a.m., my phone vibrated. Motion detected. Inside. The alert wasn't from outside, it was from the attic entrance. My stomach dropped the second I saw the notification. I didn't move, just lowered the phone carefully not to make a sound, and opened the live feed. The camera pointed straight at the hallway ceiling, at the small square hatch I had never really paid attention to before. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then it moved, just slightly at first, like pressure from above. The edge of the hatch shifted down a fraction of an inch. I stopped breathing. Another slow push, and this time it opened just enough to create a thin black gap. Darkness behind it. Stillness. And then a hand slipped through. Bare. Pale. Human. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. The fingers curled over the edge, gripping it like they'd done it before, like this wasn't new, like this was routine. The hatch opened wider, slowly, carefully, without a sound, and the person lowered themselves down. I watched it happen in real time, every second stretching painfully long as one leg dropped, then the other, until their feet touched the floor. They stood there for a moment, not rushed, not panicked, just still. Then they started walking, straight down the hallway, no hesitation, no searching. They didn't check doors or windows. They didn't look confused. They walked like they belonged there, like they had been there before. The stairs creaked slightly as they stepped down, and I heard it, this time not through the camera, but directly above me. Real. Close. Too close. I slowly lowered the brightness on my phone, my thumb shaking, trying not to make a sound. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it through the walls. Every instinct told me to run, but the front door was across the room, past the staircase, past them. So I stayed exactly where I was, lying on the couch, pretending to still be asleep, while watching a stranger walk down into my living room. Then the feed glitched for a second, just 1 second, and when it came back, the figure was gone from the camera, but the footsteps didn't stop. They were still moving, somewhere behind me. I wasn't imagining it anymore. Someone was inside my house. The alert was from the attic inside. My stomach dropped the second I saw the notification. I didn't move, just lowered the phone carefully not to make a sound, and opened the live feed. The camera pointed straight at the hallway ceiling, at the small square hatch I had never really paid attention to before. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then it moved, just slightly at first, like pressure from above. The edge of the hatch shifted down a fraction of an inch. I stopped breathing.
Another slow push, and this time it opened just enough to create a thin black gap. Darkness behind it. Stillness. And then a hand slipped through. Bare. Pale. Human. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. The fingers curled over the edge, gripping it like they'd done it before, like this wasn't new, like this was routine. The hatch opened wider, slowly, carefully, without a sound, and the person lowered themselves down. I watched it happen in real time, every second stretching painfully long as one leg dropped, then the other, until their feet touched the floor. They stood there for a moment, not rushed, not panicked, just still. Then they started walking, straight down the hallway, no hesitation.
Directly toward the camera. My entire body went cold. They knew. They walked closer, step by step, until their face was just out of view, but their hand reached up, adjusting the camera slightly, tilting it. Not enough to shut it off, just enough to change the angle, like they understood exactly how to stay out of sight. My hands started shaking uncontrollably as I backed out of the app and dialed emergency services, keeping my voice barely above a whisper. "There's someone in my house," I said. "They're inside right now." The operator started asking questions, but I could barely focus because I heard it again. Footsteps. Not on the camera, not upstairs, right outside the bathroom door. I froze. The handle moved slightly, then a soft knock. Not aggressive, not rushed, just deliberate. I didn't answer. I didn't breathe. And then a voice, low, calm, almost familiar, came through the door. "I know you're awake." That voice, I had heard it before. Not clearly, not enough to place it instantly, but something about the tone, the calmness, the way it didn't rush, didn't panic, felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain, like it didn't belong to a stranger. I pressed my mouth over my hand, trying to keep my breathing silent. The bathroom light was off, the only glow coming from my phone screen dimmed to the lowest setting. I didn't move. I didn't respond. Outside the door, the person didn't knock again. They just waited. The handle shifted slightly once more, testing it, a soft, controlled movement. When it didn't open, there was a pause. Then footsteps, slow, retreating. I stayed frozen, counting in my head. 5 seconds, 10, 20. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned everything else out. Finally, I heard it. The faint creak of the hallway floor, moving away. Then silence. A full minute passed before the operator's voice pulled me back. "Sir, are you still there? Officers are almost on site." I swallowed hard. They were just outside the door. "Stay where you are. Do not engage." I nodded instinctively, even though she couldn't see me. Another minute. Then, a loud knock from the front door. "Police!" The word hit me like air after being underwater. I unlocked the bathroom door with shaking hands and stepped out carefully, scanning the living room. Empty. Again. But this time, I didn't feel relief. I felt watched. I opened the front door and 2 officers stepped in quickly, hands near their belts, eyes scanning everything. "Where is he?" one of them asked. I don't know," I said. "He was just here. He came down from the attic." They exchanged a quick look. "The attic?" the other officer repeated. I pointed toward the hallway. "There's a hatch. I think he's been living up there." That was the first time I said it out loud. Living. Up there. Inside my house. The officers moved cautiously down the hallway, one of them pulling down the attic hatch fully this time. A narrow ladder unfolded with a soft metallic click. A flashlight beam cut into the darkness above. "Hello?" one officer called. "Police! Come down now." No response. They climbed up. Every second stretched tight as I stood below, staring at that open space like it might swallow me whole. Then the first officer's voice came down, sharper now. "You've got to see this." My stomach dropped. The second officer shifted, looking back at me. "Stay here." But I could already hear movement above them. Something shifting. Something alive. Then, a voice came from the attic. Clear. Directed straight at me. "Daniel, you weren't supposed to find out this way." My blood ran cold, because this time, I knew exactly who it was. For a second, everything around me went quiet. Not silent, just distant, like my brain refused to process what I had just heard. "Daniel, you weren't supposed to find out this way." I stepped closer to the hallway without realizing it, my voice barely working. "Eric?" There was a pause above, then movement. The officer shifted, and a few seconds later, they brought him down. My older brother. Same face, same voice, just thinner, tired, hollow, standing in my house like he belonged there. I couldn't even speak at first. I just stared at him, trying to connect the person in front of me to everything I had seen, everything I had felt over the past weeks. "You've been here?" I finally said. Eric didn't look at me right away. His eyes stayed low. "I didn't have anywhere else to go," he muttered. The words didn't land as sympathy. They landed as betrayal. "You were living in my attic?" I said louder now. "You were coming down at night, taking my food." "I wasn't trying to hurt you," he cut in quickly. "I just needed time. I was going to leave." "But you didn't," I snapped. "You stayed. You hid. You watched me sleep." That last part hung in the air. The officers glanced at each other. One of them stepped forward, placing a firm hand on Eric's shoulder. "Sir, we're going to need you to come with us." Eric didn't resist. As they led him toward the door, he finally looked at me. "I didn't want you to see me like this," he said quietly. But that wasn't the problem. I hadn't seen him. That was the problem. The police searched the attic after they took him out. What they found made everything worse. A thin mattress laid across the beams, empty food wrappers, mine, bottles of water, a flashlight, and a small pile of things he had taken, not just food, a spare charger, old clothes, even one of my watches. Proof that this wasn't just a few nights. He had been there weeks, maybe longer. The next few days felt unreal. I gave my statement, showed them the footage, every clip, every moment. They told me Eric could be charged, unlawful entry, trespassing, possibly more depending on how it was handled. But the legal side wasn't even the hardest part. It was the calls. My parents found out. At first, they were shocked. Then, they started asking questions. Why didn't you help him sooner? Maybe he was just desperate. He's still your brother. I stood there, holding my phone, replaying the footage in my mind. him standing over me while I slept. He was watching me every night. There was no answer to that. I didn't stay in the house after that. Not immediately. I packed a bag and stayed with a friend for a while. Even during the day, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was above me, just out of sight. When I finally went back, it didn't feel like my home anymore. Every creak meant something. Every shadow felt wrong. The first thing I did was remove the attic ladder completely. Then I sealed the hatch, installed new locks, a full security system, cameras in every main room. Not because I was paranoid, because now I knew what it felt like to be watched, without knowing. Weeks later, I sat alone in the living room again. Same couch, same position. But everything had changed. I opened the camera app out of habit, watching the empty hallway feed. Nothing moved. Nothing blinked. No shadows. Just silence. But it wasn't comforting, because now I understood something I couldn't unlearn. Sometimes, the person you feel safest around is the one standing closest in the dark. And you don't even know they're there until it's too late.